Hello and welcome to Olsem Wanem. I'm Florence John Duo. There are three things that are essential to human survival: food, shelter, and clothing. In Papua New Guinea, the connection to the land is paramount, and the shelter is regarded as an extension of the land. You will notice that shelter designs are unique to communities. They have been so for many generations. But times are changing, and the types of shelters being built at the community level are now slowly adapting modern elements. But how safe are they? Are they safe enough to withstand disasters, whether natural or man-made? Given that Papua New Guinea is prone to many natural disasters, the need for safe shelters has become a necessity, especially in recent years. The International Organization for Migration, or IOM, is spearheading training on safe shelters and was in Torokina in the Autonomous Region of Bougainville recently.
The Autonomous Region of Bougainville, located to the east of Papua New Guinea. Just like the rest of the country, Bougainville is exposed to a range of natural hazards. Cyclones, floods, earthquakes, volcanoes, just to name a few. Climate change is expected to further exacerbate the risk of natural hazards by increasing the frequency and severity of these events. The International Organization for Migration has identified shelter as a major factor in ongoing disaster risk reduction and preparedness strategies, increasing the resilience and preparedness of rural communities against future severe weather events.
And then under shelter, we have actually documented all the vernacular shelters in PNG, all the types of indigenous shelter that are existing in the country, and we have identified weaknesses of those shelters based on the conflict between modern materials and traditional materials, and how the conflict between the liking of modern materials is actually affecting the shelters in PNG and actually exposing people to more risk to disasters. So based on this analysis, that's why we are teaching people on how best they can increase their skills to apply modern materials on indigenous housing, and then how can they actually check the quality of their workmanship and the joints and the bracing that can require to make their shelter strong. It's part of the awareness. Based on that analysis, we actually identified that shelter was one of the most important components that we are working on. So that's why we are here at this workshop, to actually upgrade their skills in terms of trying to mitigate the impact of hazards on shelter.
IOM is in partnership with the Autonomous Bougainville government in facilitating these workshops to upskill communities in disaster preparedness and response. And they were in Torokina on the west coast of Bougainville recently.
Everyone is participating, and the approach that we are using is actually practical. It's actually something that they can do. The only issue that we are realizing, we are making the community identify gaps that they have never been looking at. For example, they have never done an inventory of shelter weakness in this whole community. They don't even know what are the weaknesses in their shelter that can actually make them to be exposed to multi-hazards that impact this area. So that on its own, it's a learning experience to the community to start to work on their action, to start to do preparedness.
Their mission? Provide training on safe shelters. Humanitarian Benchmark Consulting has been engaged by IOM to conduct a series of shelter assessments in areas of PNG vulnerable to extreme weather conditions and ensuing natural hazards. This includes assessments covering 5 communities across 4 provinces. However, this has been expanded to 13 communities in 14 provinces. They were on the ground to provide training for the participants.
So, no volcano ya temem se tromem dust. Em se parapio kaike blomir gana. Se aus saksake tem giron se pundan lem. Beti se de parapio. So, Wanem atuya.
What we did with this community, we did two assessments. One assessment was a baseline study of what these communities affected, why is it that they are affected. Based on the information that we learned from their baseline study, we actually developed some what we call participatory raw appraisal tools that we used to come up with what we call community-based disaster risk management planning. So we are planning with this community to identify the multi-hazards that affect this community and the structures that are actually affected by those hazards and how it actually impacts their livelihoods, also how it impacts their lives in this community, even also their wealth creation and their activities.
You're watching Olsem Wanem. When we come back, how IOM is partnering with the Autonomous Bougainville government in disaster risk reduction through safe shelters. Welcome back. In partnership with the Autonomous Bougainville government, IOM is facilitating training for communities that have been identified as vulnerable to the effects of natural hazards such as rising sea levels, earthquakes, volcanoes, just to name a few. In this segment, IOM explains what this partnership entails.
For the Autonomous Region of Bougainville, climate change poses one of the greatest threats to the livelihood of communities. Given these challenges, the IOM is now partnering with the Autonomous Bougainville Government, National Disaster Center and Climate Change Development Authority, as well as other stakeholders in providing training for vulnerable communities on Bougainville.
We have already discussed this issue with the Disaster Office of ABG. We've also discussed with the Vice President about this issue. The issue is it needs a lot of all government approach in terms of how it is actually managed.
High still that high impact, for instance, volcano or earthquake. Earthquake can come up at high impact, but then you come up one time, one time to submitting.
The government from ABG level up to the person in the community should know the procedures and the SOP on how they manage this whole situation. It should not be the disaster office alone who know how to manage this situation. Even a child inside the classroom in grade 2 or grade 1 should be aware on terms of what to do when they are affected. So the issue of awareness from all the levels of the society, from the sub-national structure to the national structures, is actually what is very key.
For this specific program, through funding from USAID, IOM is facilitating the training for communities in Torokina, Panguna and the atolls. This training focuses on building the capacity of local government, communities, NGOs and shelter cluster members in relation to safe shelter, disaster risk reduction and humanitarian responses.
We want it to be multi-sectoral in terms of approach. We want to make sure that also people from various locations are here. Like from here, we have people from Panguna, we have people from the Catras Island, we have people from Feed, we have people from Motlok and Tasmania. All these people actually gathered here. They've got the way they are being affected by various hazards in those areas. So there's actually pollination of knowledge among participants from different areas so that they can learn from one another.
Participants were given the task of identifying the threats, how these threats can affect shelter, as well as how to mitigate the effects of these threats on shelter through strengthening shelter. The approach taken by the facilitators of this training has allowed for participants to identify the threats in their communities, but more importantly, figure out how they can work to ensure that they are prepared for these threats.
Biggest risk when we identify time we workshop, we look Olsem volcano and one face biggest risk because the volcano and strike all get something is coming. Rain and by coming, tsunami by come up, earthquake too by come up. Time volcano emi activity belonging emi bagarap and ba already slap and disaster emi save come inside. Na very risk lo mi pla inside lo community na district as a whole.
When we return, we bring you the story of Naomi Salvo, one of the few that was around in Torokina when Mount Bagana last erupted. Welcome back to Olsem Wanem. During the workshop on safe shelters, Olsem Wanem took time to speak with Naomi Salvo. Aged in her late 60s, she is one of the very few survivors from the last known eruption of Mount Bagana. She speaks about how she continues to live in the shadows of Bougainville's active volcano.
Torokina, on the west coast of Bougainville, is a special place. Although the district is connected by a basic road network, this road network does not connect to neighboring districts, making Torokina only accessible by sea. A short 10-minute walk from the main Torokina district station is Vanua Hamlet. It is here that we meet Naomi Salvo. Aged in her late 60s, Naomi is one of the very few who were alive the last time Mount Bagana erupted. The daughter of the village paramount chief, she is an authority on matters within this part of Torokina. She spoke with Olsem Wanem, beginning with her memories of the last time Mount Bagana erupted.
Name blomi Naomi. Naomi Salvo. Namisa staplo des plaliklik place blomi, wante pemli blomi. Pipe la pemli blomi staplomi. Vanua. Name blom liklik place blomi emi Vanua. 1965. Embin Pairap. You know not looking diwa, you know not looking garden, you know not looking ground. You know not looking. 1965 then emik one emia paya I blow. Me play bin stop taso. All houses too already broke. You know not karamap to umbrella or one something ego. Umbrella by broke. You stop taso long house na you look. Taso this time colonial. Maski something I put down. Kai blow me play ka. Kai tu by you by ni inside long. One emia. Swamp is in swamp.
According to Naomi, living in the shadows of Mount Bagana is not all that bad. The volcano, also an important part of the agricultural system, allowing for crops to grow well.
Suppose me put down, na rain come. Na was him something ya. But you look him taro blow you, cow blow you, kumu blow you, one him kind something blow you, banana inside low garden blow you. But say you put him fertilizer because I'm fertilizer to you. By grow good through. molo kebitsia by Olsem. Bolo kumuya olo kau ya bolo try plano gutu. Olsem now genya. Now genya mi play kai good. Because in been put down na mi rainy come wasi mi go inside long garden blow mi.
But in recent times, Naomi has realized that the danger in living in this part of Bougainville has been slowly increasing, with 2 major earthquakes within the last year proof of that.
Long earthquake, mi play sabi kisin big pla heavy stere. Mi play no say stop good too, mi play say ting too much long. How about you mi stop? Because earthquake is sabi come, by go back, by come again. Na rain too, suppose mi come, wara blow mi pla by blow. Bagarapi mi pla. Sampla time, im sabi come, bagarapi mo garden blow mi pla no sabi gat kai. By mi pla, painim time lo, painim kai. All house bin bagarap. All house bin bagarap. Mi pla, all wara tu, i bagarap, do drink. Mi pla no kisim wara. Mi pla kisim wara long kulau taso. Mi pla drink wara long kulau taso. Wara blow mi pla bagarap, mi pla painim time long cooking dikit kai blow mi pla. Got wara blow cooking kai because time earthquake come by mi sekim ground wara tu by bagarap. By Olsem Milo. Na by you looking long wara blow mi pla long here by solap. Suppose earthquake come. By solap by you like go walk about it go. Like was no nap. Like blow you go inside by nap. I mean Olsem by can buruki go down. Sampla by over Olsem taso. Lo houses by over. Na mi pla tu mi play sabi ting too much lo this pla. Because hard to walk too. All man only got all strong pla man in body hurry up na walking with house. All say mi pla ya. No God, because me too bikini blow me no stop close to lo me. All kita boy blow me only out to stop long lo walk.
You're watching Olsem Wanem. We continue with Naomi Salvo's story, one of the few that was around in Torokina when Mount Bagana last erupted.
Torokina will always be home for Naomi and her family. They have a strong connection to the land, something that is the same across all cultures in Papua New Guinea.
This play me hard, Lo mi pla long run away. Long you pla Olsem long buka all Wanem hap. You pla easy. Mi pla no kat you pla kam na pla lukim. Way now mi pla stop Mi pla lo turanguya. Volcano suppose mi pairap. Mi pla say poret. Bayu mi painim way Olsem Wanem. Because mi pla too. Mi pla no gatim car. Mi pla no gatim when something blong run away. Mi time mi pla go down by one me by bagarapi mi pla mi pla no gatim way long run away. Mi pla stop inside through long Mount Bagana. Ting blow me no na plus in Pelesia. Cause you look at me lapun now. Di lapun tas mi stop here. Good pla.
Solution that we will get from here is that
The skills being learnt from the workshop on safe shelters, according to Naomi, are crucial in ensuring that they live in harmony with the environment around them.
Mi problem suppose time no good come by all. This problem man you play training more yeah. Or you can walk in more houses problem. Na mi play ama master.
Naomi's story is one that is representative of many communities on Bougainville. Being a largely matrilineal society, women play a lead role in the affairs of communities. one of the reasons why the IOM champions the involvement of women in their training.
To me, the best opportunity is actually to involve more women and children and the youth into this whole safe shelter approach, because those are the people that can likely become the victims when they're actually impacted by the hazards. So we normally prefer to say the most vulnerable should actually participate and get informed as a way to minimize the impact. So to me, it's an opportunity that they've already been given to start to understand their community and to know all the nitty-gritties of what makes them to be unsafe and work on them to actually to progress to safety. The thing that they've learned actually as a community is the absence of an evacuation management. If the volcano is going to erupt at level 3, no one knows where to go. So what is likely going to happen is a scenario where everyone will be running to the school to look for their children, while others are running to the garden to look for children and their wives. And then at the end of the day, there's commotion and number of lives can be lost. The issue is to have actually a standard operational procedure on how to manage evacuation in case of a level 3 of a volcano, and everyone will know that by so many hours, the furthest person should have arrived at the location of safety. These are actually the things that we're actually working on.
Because sometimes when you think earthquake, you will always think that earthquake is really big impact.
Now we can check him you too. Walking some plan click walk inside wrong place blow you. We play mamas you play calm.
That's all we have time for on this episode of Olsem Wanem. If you have any questions or comments, please email us on the address now showing on your screen. You can also check out our Facebook page. To view this episode, log on to EMTV website where you will find a link to the Olsem Wanem page. Join us same time next week as we take you to the Trobriand Island in Milne Bay Province where IOM continues its work on safe shelters. Until then, it's goodbye for now.